What's up, Wholesale Nation? My name is Undrea King.
And I'm Andy Speed.
And welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us today. So we have one exciting guest that's going to be on today. Before we get there, though, I know this week, coming up in the next week or so, we're going to be heading out on our mastermind trip.
We're going to see this guy.
Yeah. So it's going to be nice to go out. It's going to be in the Dominican.
What is it? Where are we going?
Punta Cana, somewhere out there.
Punta Cana, Dominican Republic.
Yeah,
so we'll know how to say it when we get back. By the time 2 or 3 days there, we'll figure out how to say it, and then we'll be able to tell you. But
right
now, it sounds like a cuss word.
Yeah. It's like, if I'm saying this correctly, I have to look it up and Google it. But I heard it's a nice place to go. But for those who hadn't been a part of, a mastermind, is that, we've learned a lot in a mastermind, and you'll hear us we'll talk about it in this interview. But if you hadn't got in a group of individuals of like-minded that are smarter than you, then you're doing yourself a disservice, right? And I've always heard that if you're the smartest person in the room, it's time to move and get in a new room. Okay,
yeah, absolutely.
And what you're going to hear from the guy that's that we're going to be interviewing today, Steve, is that what you're going to hear is that this is definitely one of those guys that you want to be in the room with, right?
Every time you talk to Steve, it's a learning experience. The guy's got so much experience, not only in this industry, but in life. So he brings tremendous value to every conversation that you have. And, he's actually called me on a few items. He's definitely not afraid to get in your face when you see some BS. And you'd already made it back to the hotel when we were in Utah. I don't know if I told you this,
right?
But he ripped me a new one that night. He said, he got on to me about a couple of things, and I don't even. It was well into the evening, but it was all about, growing your network. I mean, and that's essentially what it was.
Mm-hmm.
We were about to have a conversation about potentially joining another group. And, he feels so passionately about it because he invests in being in the right rooms. And it shows in just general conversation with the guy that he's always, whether it's in business or in personal life, he's always trying to get in around the right person to help him grow as a person. Because I think you'll see it in the interview. He's reflected upon himself quite a bit. Like, he's got a lot of, introspective? Like, he's got a lot of perspective about who he is as a person. And then it shows in his business and how he's grown as an entrepreneur.
Right.
So I'm really excited about this one.
Right. And so that's what you're here. He's one of those guys that, he works on the things now that he enjoys. Right. And he's had businesses that he's done well in, but he didn't really enjoy it. So you'll hear a lot about that, making sure that you're working in the right avenue. And without any further ado, I'd like to bring on Mr. Steve Richards. All right. So Steve Richards, welcome to the show, man.
Thanks. Awesome to be here.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. So, Andy, we met Steve, it's been a little over a year.
Yeah, it's been about a year for me.
Right.
Obviously, I'd heard about you. We talked on the phone a couple of times before we actually met. Before we even met, you created, instant value in our business. I think we talked for about an hour and a half one day. I appreciate you taking the time that day. And, and you actually met in Kent's backyard for the first time. And I was already I was feeling good. I've been there for a while. But now it was a pleasure meeting you. It's been great to connect with you since then. And, definitely brought a lot of value to us, and looking forward to all the value that you can bring to our listeners, for sure.
Yeah. And I would say for me, I think the first time I met you, you were in the front of the room, and you were in our boardroom class. You were kind of at the top. So I said, I need to know that guy and find out what he's doing.
Funny.
He was speaking in the front of the room. And anytime someone's speaking in front of the room, I was taught to go talk to that person. Right. That's probably the person that knows what they're doing. Right. So that's, that's how we met. And again, we've learned a lot from you over the last year or so that we've met. But for our listeners that don't know you, so how did you get started in the business? I know you came from a diverse background, but how did you get started in business, and where are you at now?
Yeah. Well, again, thanks for having me. It's cool to be on, and all those kind words are nice, but I learned just as much from you guys. So it's awesome to see what you guys do in your market and building Wholesale Nation. And I don't come visit you personally, but with Facebook, I feel like I'm kind of there with you guys.
Yes, that is.
So that's cool. But so this is my quick background story. So I'm in the Indianapolis market. I grew up in northern Indiana. I've lived here my entire life. And I went to business school and got out of school thinking I really I worked in the technology sector, and it was actually during the .com stuff in the late 90s. And it was really cool. It was an interesting, unique time to get out into the corporate world, though, because there was crazy dudes with no idea what they were doing with napkins with a business plan, and they were coming in and getting $2 million of venture capital to come up with some kind of .com idea, right?
Right.
And the whole thing was a big bubble, as everyone knows, and it kind of popped. But it was interesting to see during that time I was doing consulting. Mm-hmm. So I'd go into a business and kind of whiteboard out what they're doing, and we'd be like, hey, you can, all this like 10 days of work and all this cost, we can build an app, not an app at the time, but like software. We can put some automation in place. So I started to get to see, like, really understand business. And I had a business degree and I didn't learn anything about business in college. Like literally I learned more in my fraternity, being in the social chair and being on student government at my college. And I learned more doing that stuff, the extracurricular, than I did in class.
Right.
I just learned that I don't like having people tell me what to do, is what I learned in college.
I can believe that about
you.
Yeah. No, nobody's going to hire me after this. I'm unemployable. I'm putting it out on the web. So anyway, during that time, I kind of got bit by the entrepreneur spirit. And then after, like, I don't know, it was like 7 years maybe in the corporate world, I'd kind of climbed through the ranks and done and seen a lot more, but I knew I wanted to start a business. I started a technology business that was a real good learning lesson for me. And when I sold my part out of it, I didn't make any money. I just basically got out. We were blowing like a bunch of money per month with a PR company. And it was an interesting time, but I basically just got out for what I got in. So financially, it was like a wash, but I learned a ton. Mm-hmm. I learned about how to really read a P&L, how to understand how to, like, bringing equity partners on. I learned a lot of different things, and I learned a lot about myself. And so I knew I wanted to do something, and real estate just kind of fell into place. I don't have some special place in my heart for real estate. And what's funny, most people, every once in a while I talk to someone who's like, yeah, my parents are in real estate, but I don't know how you guys are. But I don't think anyone grows up thinking like, I'm going to be a realtor or I'm going to be a real estate investor.
No, it happens.
Yeah. It doesn't happen. At least most of the people that do well at it. So at any rate, in 2004, I started in the business. Mm-hmm. And within 6 months.
Now, was this like a seminar? Was this like, did you see something on TV? Like, what sparked it though?
Actually, I played a lot of basketball at the gym, local gym. Uh-huh. And one of the guys I was playing basketball with, I told him, man, I just sold out of this startup that I had. I'm looking to do something. I can't work for anybody anymore. And he's like, that's crazy. My dad and I had just spent $30,000 going to all these seminars for the last 6 months. And we were going to start this real estate business, but he was traveling a lot for J&J. He was a regional rep and he had like 15 states. So he's on a plane literally almost every day, like flying from one to the other, and come back home. And his dad was kind of flaking out on him. And he was like, look, and he just gave me a pile of 3-ring binders. This is how long ago it was. There was no like, here's my login to the portal. Right. The Kajabi portal online. It was like, here's 3-ring binders of what I spent $10,000 going to this 4-day boot camp back when there'd be like 1,000 people at a live seminar, you know, now it's webinars and whatever. So that's how it started. But we got in the business, we were flipping, and within 6 months, I quit my day job, had a really good full benefit, 6-figure, you know, corporate job, and hated it. Right. Money was a little different back then where you could just like buy, I would make money every time I bought a house. Right. Because I'd buy it at like 70 cents on a dollar, but I'd get a loan for 80 cents on a dollar. So I'd like buy the house, and in India, cash flowed, and I would borrow like an extra, you know, 5 or 10 grand and be like, oh, cool. I want to make another 20 grand next month. I just need to buy 4 houses.
Right. And then
there's no selling them. I didn't have to sell them to make any money.
Right.
And if, spoiler alert, if every house you buy has financing on the back end of it, that's probably not the best model to go into a deep recession 4 years later.
Right.
So, you know, we actually grew during the recession, but at that time we were flipping a lot of those houses. So I would borrow money out of them, but we would still fix them up, and then we put them back on the MLS, and we were rehabbing a lot. And as the market started to shift, we saw it slow down. And actually in the spring of 2006, it didn't. That was the second year we were going into a spring after doing this. We noticed prices like held steady, and the days on market was creeping.
Right.
So in 2007, it got really bad in the spring when we came out of like, we're after the holidays. And so we started selling on contract terms. So I got into rent to owns. But for many of you guys that may know, that 2007, 2008 timeframe was also when subprime lending started to fall through.
Right.
And that's actually what powered all the rent to own stuff, because you would put someone in place, they would rent it for 6 to 12 months. And then they would do like a land contract refi. So that was a second iteration where I saw we were kind of dependent on the economic cycle. Right. As we were flipping, when the retail sales slowed down, it hurt us. Then we were slow flipping with rent to own, but we were dependent on the subprime market. And we were using bank lines, like traditional, conventional like a regular bank. We'd have a line, like a $500,000 line of credit at 2 or 3 banks. And as we got into 2008, the next thing that happened was those lines of credit guys were calling like, hey, by the way, you know, we're just giving you a heads up. We're not renewing your line this year. We didn't have the horror story of we're calling it due today and I'm taking your personal house. Like that didn't happen to us, but it was a third time, you know, in 4 short years, less than 4 years, all of a sudden, like we kind of got in a rhythm with something and it was dependent on someone else.
So like, did that kind of feel like you were on a job or something? Because that kind of reminds me of being on a job where you think everything's going well and someone pulls the rug from under your foot. Yeah. Yeah.
It didn't feel like I worked for anyone, but it felt like my livelihood wasn't dependent on, I didn't have 100% control.
Right.
So what you're saying is true. So we took all those learning lessons and then in 2009, going into 2009, 10, we realized if we're not going to be flipping these things to retail buyers, it actually makes sense to buy cheaper houses. Because the rent to owns were still like first time home buyers. We started going more into that sub like 20% below median home price where we had like we could buy cheaper, but cash flow was better. So then at some point we owned 40 or 50 rentals and we got more into that and we were holding the rent to owns and we were just wholesaling off a few. And I really didn't understand wholesaling then. I knew it was, but I didn't know it was a business model. So anyway, to kind of make the whole long story a little bit faster, over the next 3 or 4 years, we got into a turnkey model, mostly because I wouldn't sit down and commit to building a sales force.
Okay.
I knew I still wanted to sell, but before I used realtors and I had a nice pretty house and I sold it on the MLS, but now I'm trying to sell these rentals and some of them are not pretty. And even the ones that are, you know, pretty that are rentals aren't selling to a homeowner. But instead of getting good at building a sales force, because that was hard for me, I decided to rehab all of them. And then once I was doing that and I already had 50 rentals of my own, well, why don't I go ahead and put tenants in them too? And now people are like, well, yeah, I'll buy from you because you fixed it up, you found it, you put a tenant. So we fell backwards into turnkey,
right?
Which I think happens a lot. So we designed a turnkey business out of happenstance. It was never designed to be profitable in each business unit. That's why I look up to Kent and guys like Memphis Invest that do it right. It's really hard to do that. And my opinion is turnkey is a slippery slope when you get into it for the wrong reasons.
Right.
Because you have a buyer and they bought 2 or 3 and you messed up the rehab and they're getting ready to buy 2 more and you don't really want to tell them. So you just go back and spend $3,000 fixing the rehab without telling them.
Right.
But you're eating money left and right, or a tenant leaves right away and it doesn't seem fair. So you give them the rents anyway.
Right.
To try to make up for it until you get the next tenant. But then the buyer has like a complete fictitious view of what really, they don't understand that rehabs don't get done right sometimes.
Right.
They don't understand that tenants leave in the first month sometimes.
Right.
So like all your buyers they're delusional.
Right.
They think houses don't break and tenants always pay.
Right.
So that's a problem, right? Because that stuff happens. So that was interesting for us. We did several hundred transactions during that time. And then I took on a REIT client, like $1 billion REIT in 2014. And we helped them buy over 100 houses and it was all on the MLS. Mm-hmm. And then we were managing for them, doing rehabs for them. And I got to see, the cool thing was at that point in time, I was also in 2013, I got introduced to the book Traction, right, which I'm sure you guys probably talk about in your podcast all the time.
Right.
I was going through 2 things. One, I'd literally read the book twice and I was going through it. The third time I made my executive team go through it with me. And so we were trying to work through the very first chapter. Mm-hmm. We put all these core values together that seem right. And then I'd be like, dude, I hate all these. I don't like any of these. And they're like, well, what do you like? And I would sit there and we'd spend a whole nother week, multiple sessions, and come up with all the core values I like. And my team's like, dude, none of our customers are going to care about this. So it took several months of being pig-headed and stubborn. I finally realized, well, maybe I'm not in the right business because I literally don't care about this.
Right.
I don't want to manage the margins of toilets, tenants, and contractors. Like that's what turnkey is. It's all the unsexy, boring, hard, mundane, skimming 10% off the top on the management and construction just to fund it. It's not, if that's not your thing, and I'm a visionary, so it was hard for me. So anyway, I looked up at that point in time. We'd also been working with that REIT that year, and everybody we dealt with on their team was a MBA, Wall Street kind of, for lack of a better term, pimp. And I'm talking to them thinking like, man, this is the kind of people that work for a real organization.
Right.
And if anybody hears this that used to work for me, I'm not kicking them. But I hired Mike. What's that?
So you're not calling them a pimp?
Yeah, no, they're not actually. But I hired like my neighbor's wife. I met a dude at the men's ministry at my church who needed a job. Like I had been cobbling together a team and ended up at one point in time, like 23 families were, feeding themselves off of our business. And
business that you weren't in love with.
Yeah, I hated it. We weren't even doing a good job. I mean, at the end of the day, and everyone got attracted to me from the strategic side, like, hey, you're putting together all these deals and getting them rehabbed, and the market, and you understand like financing, and you can help with all that, and all the strategic consulting piece. Why they came to us within a 6 to 12 month cycle of them owning several properties. The only conversations we were having was, hey, why isn't leasing happening faster? What's up with your maintenance? Can I get a deal on the management? Like, it turned into like this direct relationship of managing dollars and pennies and margin.
Coming to you?
Yeah, because I didn't understand how to empower a team.
Just knowing you, that's got to be brutal for you.
Yeah, I had my team fronting them, so they weren't like calling me directly.
Right.
But this was a bigger problem. I created all these mini-me's instead of individual people who could own a piece of a business of an orchestrated model that actually works. I just did more. The way I did more business was I created little mini-me's.
Right.
So I was doing more at all the time. So I could basically always do more of what I was doing, which was not a good business model.
Right.
Right.
I think a lot of people listening to this are probably going to fall to that fate. So it's a good thing to hear.
Right.
Is that one of the first things that's important is building a business model that can stand alone without you. Mm-hmm. Because no matter how many people I had working for me, 9 out of 10 things, if there was 10 things we had to do to get paid, make money some way,
right,
somewhere, and it wasn't always the 9th step that I couldn't find someone, but sometimes on step 2, there'd be a problem and someone had to come to my office. But somewhere in each time that we made money in construction, management, flipping the home, consulting, whatever, we had 3 or 4 different ways we made money. Somewhere along the lines, it came back on my desk.
Right.
So I approved something.
You created a huge job for yourself, basically.
Absolutely. I problem solved, right? Like I delegated the responsibility to all the people, but I didn't delegate the authority.
Right. For them to make decisions.
Right.
So
part of that was because I had a broken model.
Yeah.
Nobody really knew what to do because I had to kind of like put the magic dust on it every time to make it work.
Right.
I mean, I don't know if do you guys have that where you feel like sometimes, why can't somebody else just do this?
Right.
Why does it always have to come to me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I see it a lot more than I see it for myself.
Right.
But I see Undrea having to get involved in some things, and it's like, man, why are you having to get involved in that?
Right. Why are you getting pulled back into it? That kind of thing. But like you said, it's giving people the proper authority to make a decision, allow them to make a mistake, and you just stepping away from it. Because I hear a lot that from a lot of people who think they run a business, most of the time you can't step away from it, right? And if you can't step away from your business, like if you can't step away for 3 to 6 months, then in reality you have a job, right?
And if you're the expert in every step of the process, then inevitably it's going to come back to you when it hits the fan.
Right.
Yeah. So, absolutely.
You want a transaction coordinator that's better than Undrea.
Right.
So if she doesn't have to come to him, you don't have to get involved. Right? So each time we train somebody new, there's a lot of involvement, but we want them to be better than us and empowered really to make the decisions that they need to get their job done. And in some instances, we have a salesperson right now that we have to celebrate failure.
Right.
We've got to celebrate the action and not necessarily the result, because that's what's going to produce the result inevitably. But if they're afraid to make their own decision, you can't grow. You can't grow beyond that.
Yeah. Letting them fail too. I mean, we had a situation where our disposition manager this year, like, basically forgot to put a 0 on something, for lack of a better way to put it. Sent a counter back. She was supposed to like give a $700 credit for some issue that was found in the inspection, but like knocked $7,000 off the price.
Mm-hmm.
Ouch.
It was weird the way it worked out, but literally it was the first time, as you guys know, Brian, my business partner, he's the integrator. So he had just let go of, like, she had power of attorney and everything. And he had always looked at HUDs, and he was out of town with me. So speaking about stepping away from your business, she was like, yeah, I got this HUD. He had approved the original HUD, but the HUD was coming back through because we had a credit on it.
Right.
And so he's like, do I need to look at that? And she's like, I got it. And she's really thorough with that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So then he's just looking at, like, later that next day, he's calling me. He's like, I'm looking at the wires that went in and out yesterday. I got a problem.
We're missing something.
Oh, man.
We literally got a wire back. Like, and we were only making like 10,000 on that deal, So he's like, after commissions and costs, he's like, we just sold a house for what we're going to have in it. Like, I don't even understand, like, what happened. But she was so mortified. Like, literally that never happened again.
Right.
Like, she was like sick to her stomach and couldn't believe it happened. And if Brian had caught it, the problem with your employees are, and if anybody listening to this is struggling with letting go, if they know that you're always got their back, they don't have to put their best foot forward.
Right.
Because their butt's not on the line. Because they know Andre's always going to look at the HUD, or Brian's always going to check the HUD. So why does it really matter? Like, they don't want to get caught not looking at the HUD, but they know it's in the back of their mind. They know it's not going to be disastrous. Well, it became disastrous. Luckily, we called the guy and we're like, "What are you thinking?" He's like, "I thought you just decided to give me more off on the house." And we're like, "Dude, you tried to pull one over on us." And we were, made a note in the database, like, "Don't do business with this guy anymore."
Right.
But my point is, it's those losing propositions. Like, you hope that you don't lose a ton of money, and in the end, we got the wire and it all worked out. But I've learned that those are really tough for us as entrepreneurs to let happen. But sometimes, like, you got to let it happen, because once that person knows they have ultimate, like, possible for failure, they also have the ultimate responsibility to, like, step up.
Right.
That's been a tough learning lesson for us, for sure, but a good one.
Now you're partnered up with Brian. All right. So at one point there was a shift, and you went into the wholesale business and moved away from the flipping business, and turnkey and everything else that you were doing. And for most people, they start the opposite, right? They usually think, I'm going to start with wholesaling. I'm going to learn this, then I'm going to move into something that's, maybe flipping or something like that. So you did the opposite, right? So when did that come about, and what sparked that change?
So I'll tell you that regardless of which way I went, what I did and what I do now, what changed is I realized that my business needs to support me instead of me supporting my business.
Okay.
And I bet you guys agree with this. Most people get into business because what they want is they're going to have all this money and time with their family, and it's going to be awesome. And then literally it becomes this codependent, dysfunctional relationship,
right,
where it literally sucks the life out of you, and you see less of your family. And when you do see them, you're stressed and you're not really with them.
Or you're in front of the computer.
Reinvesting in the business, which basically just means you're losing money.
Right.
Right. And I'm plowing money back into the business. Whenever you hear terms like that, just know that person.
Yeah.
What'd you say?
I'm not the only one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
When you're plowing, you're really messing up.
When you're putting money, when you're reinvesting and plowing money, and you hear people saying terms like that in the context of them trying to rationalize why they're not getting what they want, they have a serious problem if they don't even know.
Right.
Like,
absolutely.
If I'm killing it and I'm reinvesting because I'm getting 10-1 back on my marketing dollars, and I'm so excited, and I'm putting money back in because I know I put more money in and get more money out, and I'm reinvesting because I know where it's taking me because I'm excited.
Right.
That's completely different. But it's like when you're rationalizing, if anyone's listening to this and you're caught in the cycle of rationalizing to yourself why you're doing these things, it's all for the greater good, but you're sacrificing personally. Like, I hate seeing all that hustle and grind and all that stuff. Of course we have to do that sometimes. Like, of course we do. But when that's your badge of honor, is like, this is what I do, 7 days a week. Like, I'm on the grind. Like, that's a horrible life, horrible existence. Like, I don't buy into that.
The other one that I would add to that is the game, the wholesaling game. This is not a game.
Right.
This is a business, and you need to build it around yourself.
Right.
And what a little bit before the show, you were talking about how you would have started with the end in mind. Your business looks different now. Your life looks different now. What sparked that change? Was it just like sudden one day you woke up? And so what happened? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So to kind of pick up where we were talking, I was going through that core value. So two things were happening. I was realizing I don't like the business we have, and I'm not really that great at it, and I'm not using my value and purpose in life.
Right. Because you didn't like it. Yeah. That's what happens when you don't like it.
Yep. And it was filtering out. I had gotten, like, I'd always been super in shape and played different sports and did things and, like, tried to stay on it. And then in my 30s, I'm 44 now, but in my mid to late 30s is when I was really, like, out of my element with the business, because the business from the outside looking in was taking off.
Right.
People are asking me to go up on stage, and I'm doing all these deals, and then they want to go to dinner afterwards. And I'm like, man, I don't know if my credit card's going to actually, I hope this dinner bill's not too big, because I don't know how much money's in my account right now. You know what I mean? It's like it's the most biggest imposter complex issue ever, because, like, especially when you're a visionary and people want to come and listen to what you're doing, and someone like me likes to talk about it.
Right.
But most people, like, the best 5 minutes of their life is on Facebook. They don't put the rest of their life that sucks that week on social media. So I was kind of in that spot. That's what was changing was I was so convicted in my thinking of like, I was a little bit of a fraud.
Right.
Like everyone thinks his business is awesome except me. Right. And I'm not telling them any different. So like I would go to masterminds and we were talking about this, this one thing I don't like about the masterminds is when someone gives you an idea or a vendor, they should have to tell you how long they've been doing that and how it really went.
Right.
Because if someone's like, oh, I'm doing this, like Sean Terry did it. Like he told us one time about how he was sending fresh cookies out with all the offers. Were you guys around when he did that?
Yeah.
He was like, this is unbelievable. And then the next time he's like, oh yeah, I lost so much money doing that.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
It's so funny.
For a year and a half, I sent out like gifts and thank you cards and things to sellers. Didn't get not one. Even put on there, I was giving away a free TV. I mean, then I realized the people that are distressed probably don't want their family to know that they were distressed. Right. Yep. So they wouldn't refer people.
And we get referrals now from just treating people right.
Yeah.
It's not a gift, tip for tat.
Yeah. Just
cookies don't warm over sellers, right?
Yeah.
So, but to finish what I was saying, so at the same time, I got to look into this $1 billion client we had who had done 15,000 homes in 9 states in 4.5 years. Mm-hmm. I mean, they were like a finely tuned machine. This will hit home with you guys. I don't know where you're at with your meetings, mm-hmm. but I know either you're there now or we're there in the past. But we used to have these meetings where everyone comes in. There's a 5 minutes late. Some people are 5 minutes early. It's like a 15-minute window where you don't really get started, but people are kind of talking.
Right.
And then everyone dumps everything on the desk. And then you're in there for like an hour and a half and you almost feel like nothing got done. And everyone's checking their phones. This client, we were literally at one point in time, like 1 month, they gave us like 40 new houses that got released from construction. In a month, 40 houses to market out for leasing, to fill. Wow. And we already had 20 or 30 properties that we'd already filled like the month or two before. But we would have a call with them. On the property management call, we shared an online report. Mm-hmm. And so Wednesdays at noon was our call, I believe. So by Tuesday at noon, we had to have all the online report updated. And everybody had to already look at it before the meeting. So we did a conference call at noon on a Wednesday. Nobody had to share any information. If you got on there and you hadn't read everything ahead of time, they were just mad. Right. It was not going to go well. They didn't expect, they would tell you, hey, we're going to hang up now because we're not having this. Prepare yourself. Call us back when you're ready. And the other thing is they had enough expectations laid ahead of time. So if a house had gotten to 21 days and it didn't have a tenant in sight, mm-hmm. we were going to, really it's 23 days. If we were going to hit 30 days, we knew we were a week out from hitting 30. Not once you hit 30, right. We knew we were a week out with no prospects. That was an exception that had to get talked about in the meeting. So you had to know that, again, guidelines and expectations were so set that we would get on the call and they'd be like, okay, here's the first 30. They're all fine. They're either leased or they're on track. Okay, here's one. It's at day 24. We don't start the conversation. When they say that, I'd say, okay, we're running a move-in promotion. We dropped flyers off at a local business.
Right.
We updated the pictures online and whatever.
It wasn't the other 30 that were done correctly.
Yeah. And so move on. Next 10 are fine. Okay, here's another one. This one was on an exception last week and you were going to do 4 things. How did those, you said XYZ because we already knew, right? How'd it go? And so we would literally go through like 60 properties and like, we never used the 30 minutes. They schedule 30 minutes, but we'd be done in like 10, 15 minutes.
Right. Well, you're meeting with a purpose.
And expectations and a process and agenda. And you had to be prepared ahead of time. And I started thinking like, gosh, some of my management meetings are like over lunch are like 2.5 hours. And we don't get anything done.
Right. Just talking. Right.
Oh man. All that stuff, the reality was I just wasn't happy and I wasn't feeling good. Right. So I had the core values of smacking me in the face with traction. I'm feeling like an imposter because our business looks great, but I'm hating it. The more bigger it gets, the more I hate it. And then I'm also witnessing some of this way. I'm looking on the very inside of these very successful organizations and I'm seeing what it takes. Mm-hmm. And to put all that together, I realized I don't have the heart, interest, or skill set to fix my current business to make it run like this one and make me happy.
Right.
Like the trifecta of all that stuff together, it was hard. I hit the reset button. I mean, I'm suing people. People are suing me. I'm losing money. People are losing money. Like it was a bloodbath. Like I had this 6-month plan of like how I was going to gracefully back out of everything. I think God was just like, how about 6 days, bro? The partner quits on you. Like people are stealing from you. Guys with power of attorney are selling houses that I don't even know. We still taking the money. clients like, screw you, suing me. And like, it just blew. I had no money. Like it was like imploding all around me. And I realized with my personality is that relationships matter to me. Mm-hmm. And I think I would have held on to everything, wanting to please everyone and take care of everyone. And we'd already done a lot of that. And unfortunately, for where I needed to be with my purpose in life, like I would have not gotten to where I'm headed if I would have held on to that. So it just had to burn all around me. And so through that process, I really I was fortunate that I was able to do that.
Right.
Because I think most people won't do it. And I should have done it 5 years earlier.
How many employees did you have at the time?
So I had 11 full-time people in my office, and I had 7 or 8 agents, and I had probably 15 to 20 contractors that only worked for our maintenance and construction. I mean, so like I said, there was like 30 some families that solely fed themselves off of us.
Right.
Wow.
Not to mention 100 and some clients that we were managing 350 properties for, who thought I was going to manage their properties for the rest of the next 20 years.
Right.
And then now they're like, this isn't what we said. It was really tough. And, I was firing people I really cared about. And one thing I would probably do a little different is I realized I put everybody else ahead of my family at that time and me. And it seems selfish to put yourself ahead of everybody. But the reality is by putting myself first on what I need and what I want, it allows me to be the person that can help a lot more people.
Right.
So I was helping a few people and holding some back because I didn't want to let go of them. Sometimes the very thing you don't want to do, like I didn't want a client to leave because no one will take care of them as well as I do. And I crushed them in and held on to them so long that in the end, when I did quit, like it hurt. They could have been at another management company and they could have been off flourishing, but I was trying not to hurt it. Like I didn't want to hurt them, but I did the thing I was trying not to do.
Right.
Because it was out of fear. I was doing it for the wrong reasons. And so, to fast forward all that now, I realize my value is in strategy and creativity. My purpose in life is to create impact, to create opportunity for people. So really creativity, the word create is kind of at my ethos, right? So we spend our time now. I really like what we do we're a wholesaling company. I know you guys do that as well. And I think our flavor is a little bit like, I understand the market because I've flipped more homes. I mean, I'm around 700 or something now. I've done more than, which I know like seems big to some people and other guys I know do 1,000 a year. It's like, but I guess what I'm saying is I've done more than most people. And so when a client comes to us, I can really, the empathy and connection that I want in a relationship, I can have that because I'm like, wait, don't buy this house if it doesn't make sense. Like, what are you trying to do? Right. Just like a seller, we're not going out and telling them, hey, all we care about is how much price you want for the house. That's not true. We want to know what they're trying to do, right?
Right.
Pay for grandma's cataract surgery, get rid of the headache property. So we can do the same thing with the buyers, and that's where I enjoy. The other piece is I didn't want to be dependent on economic cycles. I didn't want to be dependent on banks. So, I mean, we operate solely off our own capital and private capital now where we set the terms. And I think, Andy, that's the first time we talked. We talked for over an hour, about doing that kind of stuff. So I know you guys do that as well. Mm-hmm. So we really took control of our life by not being in these long-term flips where we're also not flipping to retail people. And now we might flip a house to a retail market every once in a while to do some, but it's like we're only taking advantage of an opportunity. It's not like our livelihood. Right. So we've learned the wholesaling piece allows us to be, in fact, it's so tied to the ups and downs, like it just goes up and down with the market. So it's easy. Like it never fluctuates because of the housing values, and we're not dependent on banks, and I'm not dependent on buyers that use financing. So we've freed ourselves of all those chains. And so what I do to try to stay focused in the business is instead of getting creative, where my creativity is going to spill out somehow. So instead of starting more businesses, I dig in and do crazy metric spreadsheets and do like training with our employees and understanding the psychology of our buyer. And like I got to find ways to outlet my creativity. And then the other core piece that I'll say is if anybody listening to this podcast is starting a business, if you're a visionary and you don't have an integrator in your life or vice versa, like it's not going to work. Right. Like you don't have to partner with someone who's the opposite, but you have to have them in your business. So luckily, if you're an integrator, it's really easy to get a business coach who's a visionary, who can push you to do more, pull you in being masterminds, and you see what's available. As an integrator, you're trying to figure out how to get things done, but you can join masterminds and coaching and have people push you to do more. The tough thing is when you're a visionary like me, if you don't bring an integrator into your life, which again might just be hiring a general manager, could even be assistant.
Right.
You need someone who will shake you by the shoulders and be like, dude, don't start this other thing until we finish this.
Right.
Or this is broke.
Come back down.
Yes. So that's a key piece. So having Brian, it's so another thing that happened with the way everything kind of fell apart in the prior business was in the ashes of that, I met Brian, and I have to credit him because I was in the middle of like, I'm starting this whole new thing and I run a RIA here in town, and he came to it and introduced himself. And I'm like, he's wanting to learn from me. And I'm like, dude, you don't even know. Like, I'm blowing you don't want to learn. Let me teach you how to blow a business up after 10 years.
Right.
But, he was like, man, I feel called. Like, we're going to do things together. In the beginning, I wholesaled a couple of deals to him. And then he's like, well, how can we get more of those? I'm like, well, I can't because I don't have a team anymore right now. I can't answer more calls. He's like, what do you mean calls? I'm like, I send out mail. Well, what if I helped you answer the phone? I'll split the mailing cost with you. Let's do more mailers. And then so we started meeting like on Wednesdays or some random time. Once a week, I'd do phone calls with him so he can learn to me, listen to me calling sellers.
Right.
And the more efficient he got, then we didn't do it together, but we would drop more mail. And, we started doing the first month we started off, we did, I don't know, 15 or 20 grand or something like that. And the next month we did about the same thing. It was off and running. And that was just in September of 2015 was when we formally launched it. And so 16, I was still doing closing down things. I still owned a lot of rentals. I was still selling stuff off. And he was flipping his own properties. But we were just kind of messing around, and we did 250 that first year. We dropped 10 grand of mail part-time. Once a week, we'd get together and shoot fish in a barrel and sandbag and be like, oh, and we were using call rail there. We were using something called Vumber. We're like, okay, I'm not calling. Wait, here's a voicemail. I need to give my house away for $1. Cool. I'll call this guy.
That's the only one.
Here's another voicemail. I need 50 grand. I'm like, I don't want to call that guy. Like, okay. So we were messing around, and like I said, dropped about 10 grand worth of mail, did about 250 in wholesaling like on the side. And so going into that's also when we went to Extreme Freedom by chance to hang out with Sean. And Brian probably wouldn't have wanted to go to that, but he was already going to be out playing golf. And I was like, dude, I'll come out. You stay for a few days. So weird how stuff happens.
Right.
And I really wanted to hang out with Sean Terry in the boardroom stuff. And now I've got a closer relationship with Kent, and he's a personal coach of ours. That's where we've met you guys, and it's become a big connection. But that's where we decided to take this seriously. Pat Precourt, if anybody knows that name, he's a great dude, and he was at that event. And so in September of 16, a year in, we were doing more that year. I don't remember what we did that year, but he was sitting down talking to us because we were still rehabbing some houses, and he was like, "You guys are screwing around, like you're just playing around." Wow. Like you're making money, and you guys are one economic downturn away from getting destroyed, getting put under. Because we didn't have we had weekly meetings for wholesaling, but not for rehabbing. Like we were just kind of messing around with it. And we're managing our own projects and calling our own subs. Brian still had his thing going. I was messing around with my last little bit of rentals. And so they're the ones that really pushed us. We joined Boardroom. And so in 2017, we had 4 or 5 people after that first year and a half we hired. In February, we went to Cabo, and we knew it then, but we didn't do it till May. We fired our entire team in May of 2017. Okay. We started over.
Right. It's kind of like us. It seems like every time we've gone to a boardroom, we have to let someone go. It's like
we follow traction, and if you're not falling in with the core values, then we've held on to people longer than we should. And
and it hurt us when we do it. Each time we held on to them too long, it hurt us in the short run and in the long run. So
and them too, probably. They're probably whoever you've let go is probably at a better job now.
Oh yeah, they're something that they like, right?
Yeah.
There's a better job out there than working for us.
there may not be.
Well, their bosses aren't as cool. That's for sure.
But that's one of the great things about you, Steve, is what you practice, you preach. What you preach, practice rather. And with the masterminds and networking, I know you're real passionate about that. After dinner one night, we were in Utah, and Undrea went back to the hotel. We got a chance to talk about that. You were really beating on me about getting your network in the right place and in the right rooms and stuff. And you showed a lot of passion in that regard. And I definitely respect that about you. And a lot of people learn that because you are who you are around, and you do it with intention. You bring a lot of value to everybody that you touch, and you want to get in those rooms. So can you talk a little bit about what your network means to you?
Absolutely. You know what, I was saying this before we started recording. two things happen when you become successful at business. You either expand your network and you're very intentional and you won't spend time with anybody that you're not providing value to, or they're not providing value to you. Hopefully you're providing value back and forth to each other.
Right.
And everyone listening to this knows, like, you have that person, like, they won't schedule lunches. Like, they don't meet for dinner because they go home to their family. Like, you become very intentional with your time is one. The other thing that can happen, and it doesn't always happen, it can be an and or with this, but is that you start, and I think I put it like when we were talking before, like, you think your poop doesn't stink, right? But you get into this bubble of you, and when you're at the top of the hill and everyone's coming to you all the time, if you lose sight, if you're not in the rooms with other people, man, the crazy stuff Brian and I come up with, it's usually me, and then I talk him into it, but it's like some unbelievably complex compensation model and some new training model and how we're going to change our business with software, right? And we're going to hire a new coach for something else. And we're going to do all, like, if you don't get on the phone with someone who's been there and done that, and they're like, dude, Kent just did it to us last week. You guys are idiots. If you do what you just told me, don't, like, go back here. And so as a visionary, when I'm like literally right at the point, and we're like you guys, I think we aspire eventually to we have a brand called The Business Behind Flipping that we've like teased, but we haven't really pushed it. I've been recording podcasts, and I'm just dying to launch that brand and have masterminds. Right. And I know with a 7-figure business and the employee, I don't see the houses. I don't use my money. I run a RIA. I do all these things, and I kind of like think I'm cool. But Kent was on me about there's an integrity issue because my business isn't where I want it. And I'm wanting, and part of me wanting to launch the other stuff is me running from like putting my head down and really making our wholesaling business special. Like really special, where everybody gets value and money's flying all over the place and it works without me. Right. And everybody's happy. And there's always things that can go wrong, but like, I need to lean into it as a visionary. And when you do, your integrator partner usually sees a visionary who's focusing, like that pulls them in. But like when I'm pulling to do something else, like that makes Brian pull back and be like, well, what should we be worrying about? So we start pulling away from each other. But like when we lean in, and we can go further, faster. Right. And so I think that translates to your question, Andy, with being in the rooms in the boardroom and stuff. If once a quarter I can't get out and be around other guys like you, like I start going stir crazy. I fall in love with my own ideas. Like I'm missing opportunity. And the other piece is I got so burnt in the past I had all the wrong team and the wrong employees because I had the wrong business. And I look back in the countless hours I spent with people where we weren't providing value to each other, but my whole team, they loved me and everything seemed great, but they didn't quite get it. And they knew that I wasn't super passionate. So it was like the subconscious underlying level is there was really no value there. They would always be excited whenever I showed up at a meeting, got everyone excited. And then I left. And the reality set in is like, it was kind of awkward because it wasn't just clicking. Because I wasn't clicking with the business. So I just had countless hours spent with people. And I feel like it sucks because they couldn't go do all the things that we wanted to do because we weren't aligned. And so being burnt with that and also getting into masterminds, again, meeting guys like you and hanging out with guys like Kent and Sean and Justin and everybody, I just got open to the idea. And that's why I was so passionate when we were talking about in Utah, Andy. I really think, man, all that life is the relationships we have and the experiences that we enjoy with those people. And like our business is designed to give us an opportunity to have new relationships and provide value, which is a good experience, or to make money to buy your time back. Like the more someone to do the stuff we don't like. But I don't think of it as much as hiring them to do something I don't like. I think is paying them to give me my time back. Because now I hire acquisition guys. I don't have to go look at houses. I hire a disposition person. I don't have to talk to a bunch of buyers. I hire a transaction coordinator. I don't have to do paperwork. So when you buy your time back, what are you going to do with it? Right. Like, so I think this was the bigger point of what we talked about ahead of the show is I think most people get in the business and they don't know what they really want. They're usually running away for something instead of running towards something.
And most people in that situation, once they buy their time back, then they fill it with something that makes them even busier and takes them away from family and other things again, right? And they end up being in the same trap, right?
Or stuff that's hollow, like cars.
Yeah. They start doing things like that, right? And so now, now that you've gotten it all figured out, right? And
far from it, I figured about this much.
Yeah, since you got the whole thing figured out now. Nah. But so now what does your business look like now? I know you've hired some people. What does your team look like now?
So we have a team of 3 people on the acquisition side that go out and look at the houses. We have a vendor, as you guys know, Gary Boomershine is a vendor of ours that does all our mail.
Solid
so guy. We have a vendor that makes the phone ring. We have a team that goes out and looks at the houses. We have a transaction coordinator that handles, like, he's more like an inside sales rep, actually. So he'll actually not only handle the transaction, but he also does the paperwork. So our reps don't even have to actually do the purchase agreements. Most of it's DocuSign, as you guys know anyway.
Right.
But our transaction coordinator is like a hybrid of inside sales.
Right.
And then we have a disposition piece on the back end where somebody that works, make sure the emails go out. And if we list a property, they do that. One thing that's unique about our team, my business partner, Brian, is a principal broker, owns an independent brokerage here in town. So most all of our team is either licensed or is working towards getting their license once they come to work for us, which gives us a little more credibility and authority. I think that's something a lot of people ask, like, do you need a license? No. But when you have one, if we ever need to run it through as a commission or a listing instead of a wholesale, or we just have more options, and it gives us credibility. And I think there's a gray area out there about if you're a wholesaler, if you're marketing a contract versus a house, and none of that's an issue for us because we have the brokerage. Brian does. So that's another piece about our team. And we're mostly doing, I would say 2/3 of the deals we do here in Indy are in the like 40 to 30 to 60,000 range, and they're mostly rental type properties, or they're a flip, but they're in a regentrifying area where someone might buy it for 50 to 100, and they're going to remarket it at 200 to 400, and they're going to put a lot of money in it because it's like a 100-year-old house.
Wow.
So again, 2/3 or more rentals. And, we don't do a lot of flips. We're not currently hard money lending anymore. We use a small network of private investors to fund things when we need to, if we're not using our own cash. We also have a line of credit with a national vendor that we don't even really need to use much, but we got it if we need it.
Right.
We're making a big shift where and I don't think it was the wrong thing to do, but in most of 2017, we started shifting where we got sick of, if people are listening that don't like the dance, we have to line up the stars and moon to get the seller and buyer so you can double close and make it all work. Like, we got so sick of telling the seller, hey, 1 more week, and they're packing up, and we're freaking out because we don't know if we can sell the house, but they're already like moving. There's a lot of pressure and stress. Or the buyer says, wait, my funds didn't transfer. I got to call my whatever Ameritrade guy. It's going to be 2 more days, and the seller's calling you, like all that stuff that happens, right? So we got away from that in 2018. Literally 95% of all the deals we did, we bought them, closed on them, took title, and that made our world so much easier. And we're able to push our prices, and we kind of got lost in that. But what we didn't realize was we also had to turn insurance on and deal with utilities and mow yards. And we hired a property manager. And then because we had more options, then we had to consider, are we going to rehab it? When you don't own it and you're assigning or double closing, you're not going to put money in it.
Right.
Yeah. That whole workflow does not exist.
Yeah. So now you have like more money, more problems, right? And more options, more problems, and then more people. And so it was an interesting, and I don't think there's a right or wrong piece, but for our model, we're making a big shift, an intentional shift this year to get back to double closing and assigning more often. In fact, we're trying to figure out what we're going to do with the capital we have because we shouldn't need it.
Right. So what's the sweet spot? You said you were at 95% wholesale or double close. What are you trying to get to? 50-50, 60-40 wholesale?
We're trying to be 80% where we double close or assign, which basically I look at it more like this. I don't really care about how it works. We're trying to do 80% of our deals where we don't take ownership.
Right.
And I'm not talking about getting the deed for a minute where you double close or you flash fund it and close it for a day. I'm talking about taking ownership and having to mow it, insure it, deal with utilities, decide if you want to rehab it. So all those headaches. So we know our margin is going to go down some this year.
Right.
But not just our cost as well, but our headaches are going to go down too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Every time we get caught up in one like that, we realize, you know what? We should have just wholesaled that thing. Yeah, because that's what we're great at, right? And you don't, like you said, you don't have to do that. And because we're not wired for it, you get the phone call, hey, there's an agent at the house and the lights are not on. Like, you know what? forgot to pay the bill, because we're not wired for that, right? We're wired for the wholesale business, and we're used to just, getting it under contract or, like you said, a quick double close. But I think for you, it seems like if you continued down that road, you were going to be heading back to flipping. Because if you would have kept going, it sounds like you were heading back to the flipping world. It's probably came back.
Yeah, you're doing half of not the construction work, right, but actually you're doing more like 3/4 of the dirty work to get the deed. And like I said, take care of the house, put it under management, change the locks, clean it out. At that point, why don't you we're starting to do all this extra work. Why don't we go ahead and do it?
Yeah. And that's how you convince yourself to get back into flipping. And next thing you know, you're flipping again. And he's like, how do we get back here? Well, margins were good. And then, economy turns again, and then you got to rewind everything. Right?
Absolutely. Yeah. The other piece is the model. Whenever, and for whoever's listening to this that's struggling with their model, whenever the more people that have to be involved and the more moving parts, again, insurance, mowing, utilities, cleanouts, lock change, literally all those moving parts take people, and they're things that we have to think about and do. The more of those, if you're trying to scale a model and there's more than 5 things you have to do to get a deal done, your scaling becomes much more difficult.
Right.
Because if we were going to double in size, we're going to do twice as much of that. You can't, yes, we could have brought property management in-house. We kind of did, and then we took it out. There's things you can do to modify it a little bit, but the reality is like sunk opportunity, costs and resources and issues and things that just are going to literally double as we double, triple as we triple.
Right.
Like there was no scaling involved in that. That was just going to have to grow linearly, like our revenue goes, and so do our expenses. Right. Like we're looking for ways to grow the revenue, like grow the expense this much and grow the revenue this much.
Right.
And you can do that with straight up wholesaling.
Right. And so talk to those people, because I hear that a lot from people that are going from flipping into wholesaling. They have an issue with that part of a signing, right? And that's where they go in, they buy the property, then they end up fixing it up and cleaning it up. And then they think they're in wholesaling, but in reality, it's more like a hoteling. But they're saying they're in wholesaling. And I think it's, maybe it's the way that they were used to buying and taking title, and they're having a hard time transitioning. I don't know if that's what you felt before also, but I'm hearing that from a lot of people that are trying to get into wholesaling.
Yeah. I mean, in the end, what I'm learning is I see a reflection of my personality in the business, and I care about relationships. So I tend to worry about assigning. I don't want a buyer to be mad that they bought a $35,000 house from us, and I'm telling them we can't come down one more dollar, and then I'm making $12,000 on it.
Right.
On a $30,000 house. You know what I mean? Like literally that just, it just seems greedy to me. And so I struggle with that, but that's a reflection of me in the business. The reality is we have to get out of our own way. When you hear things like get out of your own way, or you are the problem in your business, it's so true, because there is absolutely nothing wrong with making as much money as you can make on a deal, as long as the person that gets a deal is fine with the deal.
Right.
The reality is they're not going to probably like it. But the relationship is not as important as the transaction at some level.
Right.
Like we focus more on the relationships, but if we're so worried about everybody and we never do anything, we're not making money. So we're not going to be around to help more people in the future. And even if that guy doesn't like what he made, he's not getting a deal from us either.
Right.
So you can't get so deep into the relationship that you affect the actual business. Like I see it in regular real estate where, I'll feel like an agent might be pushing someone to buy a house, but they know, look, you want 10 things, you're only going to get 7. You should buy this house right now. I'm not going to spend every Saturday driving you around showing you 100 houses, because if the goal is to find a perfect house, it's not going to happen. So I need you guys to buck it up, forget about the 3-car garage, or choose between the basement and 3-car, whichever, or the nice lot, whatever it is. Push, like that assertive nature, right, needs to be pushed. So in sales in our business, I've learned our salespeople, whether in acquisitions or dispositions, they have to be assertive and extroverted. And extroversion doesn't just mean that you're talky. Extroversion means you have a need to connect in relationships. You want to connect with people, but their assertion has to be higher than their extroversion. If you're not both of these, you won't be good at sales.
Right.
Because you can't connect with people if you're not extroverted. And if you're not assertive, you won't step on the throat to get a deal done, right?
You can't have tough conversations.
Right.
And if you go this way, where the relationship is more important, this is the salesperson that comes back and says, oh, I know we wanted to pay X, but he's got to pay for Granny's cataract surgery. Like he really needs to make 50 on this house, and we're only offering him 40. hey, it's not our problem that he doesn't have enough equity to pay for grandma's surgery,
Right.
but we are giving him 40 of the 50 he needs.
Yeah.
So let's get that done. And then maybe I'll give you some advice on where to find the other 10. Like, I don't know.
We had a sales guy that was so compassionate that they were asking 40 and he would offer 50.
You told me that in Utah.
It's like, man, you need to start reading the notes in the CRM.
Yeah,
but, it's funny. We talked about that yesterday. For those people that have like a hard time getting over the fact of making money on a deal, whether it's a $20,000, $30,000 assignment fee. And what we found is like the people that we have made the deals we made the most money on, the seller was the most appreciative, right? And I think it's because it was a good deal. It was easy to sell, right? The process was smooth, right? And it happened so quickly that the person's like, I really appreciate it. It's the tight deals that cause a problem, because it's the tight deals that says, well, I thought it was going to close, I need an extra day, and so you actually do the seller a disservice by going in and not getting a great deal, because most times it's going to be hard to sell. You got to come up with a bunch of excuses, and the seller is uptight because they're thinking, okay, if they're beating you up on price and they win, then they want it done the next day. It's like, well, you said you were cash, so that's what we found, is that it's usually the better deals that you end up having a better time with that person.
I think the summary is that it's all in our head, not theirs.
Yeah.
My brother actually quit the business because he made 50 with the flipper gone, wholesaler, right? So we wholesaled it, made 50 grand, and he was devastated. He quit. He's like, I can't make money off of somebody when I brought no value to the table. And then she was tickled to death. Like, she loved him. Actually referred her her father-in-law's deal to us in Houston. So they were so happy with it, and they weren't going to go with anybody else. So it's our perceptions often that we're up against, and not necessarily the seller. But yeah, we got to make profit. We've got to, this is a business. So
right.
Yeah.
So, definitely want to thank you for taking the time out with us. But I know that you have your meetup that you do. And if you want to talk about that, and also you mentioned that besides the meetup, you have a podcast that you're going to be releasing, or have you released it? So let's talk about that.
Yeah, absolutely. The meetup, it's local here to Indy. So if people live here or they're investing here, it'd be cool. It's called INRIA. It's the Indiana Real Estate Investor Association. And that's been really fun for us. We don't actually charge any money for it. It's free. It's just great networking. And because of that, we have a couple meetups here in town. The best way to connect with me, though, is on Facebook.
Okay.
I've got a business page and all that stuff, but it's go find Steve Richards in Indianapolis. But the podcast, yeah, it's been I bet you guys feel the same way, but it's been like a labor of love. And it's like a distraction, but it's also like your passion and whatever. I've interviewed some really great people. I'll definitely want to have you guys on at some point. And, I've had one of the most interesting ones I recently did was Mike Michalowicz, who wrote Profit First and Pumpkin Plan. He took time out of actually the week he was launching his most recent book, and it was really cool. So I really enjoy those, and we'll be launching it at some point. But it's called The Business Behind Flipping. Actually, you can go to thebusinessbehindflipping.com right now, and you can check some stuff out about me and Brian there. Okay. And you can sign up for an email list there, and people will get access to as things come out. I do enjoy writing and put a few things together recently about like goals and how to align your goals. And so there's going to be a blog, and the podcast stuff will eventually launch. So yeah, go into The Business Behind Flipping. You can connect with us that way, or just find me on Facebook. Trying to figure out how to put the best 5 minutes of my life on social media and 5 minutes of like the most middle part of my life. Mm-hmm. So it's a little more real.
Man, you share some insight on your Facebook. There's a lot of insight about life and what's valuable and how to live. Each time I'm not a fan of reading like long posts.
I know, mine are always long.
Yeah. When you post one, I read it, man, because there's a lot of value there and insight and how to live and what makes a great life.
Right.
So keep doing it.
Yeah. Appreciate that. For sure. Basically,
I didn't get tagged on the last one though.
What's that?
I was a little upset I didn't get tagged on the last one.
I think I got tagged.
You did.
I tagged like 100 people. I was going to tag everybody I knew. And I was like, because, I got
you left
Andy out. I saw it, though. I still saw it. You popped up on the feed. If you get Undrea, generally it shows up on my feed.
That's pretty funny. But I didn't know this, but Facebook stops you at 99 people.
Oh, I didn't know that either.
Well, 100.
I've never tagged that many people.
I hadn't either. And I kept going through, and I got to like, I don't know. I mean, apparently it was before S in the alphabet, scrolling through. I was on a plane.
Or A. Maybe.
Are you sure you weren't tagged?
I'm just giving you a hard time, man.
But anyway, I do enjoy that. So that's a great way to connect. And then, I mean, I love the strategy stuff too. So even if someone's not investing in Indy, I love talking business. So if you guys ever have people that want to connect, just not only to talk about Indy real estate, but I like talking about the business. My passion is really, I struggle with beginner stuff. Like, I don't struggle with it. I know I can provide a lot of value, but it takes energy for me to talk to someone who hasn't made money in real estate yet.
Right.
Because they're full of the yeah buts. Like, yeah, but this, or yeah, but my cousin. But when I talk to people who have made money and they're like, man, I want to go to the next level. And they're like listening because they're like, dude, I'm going to do whatever you tell me. Like, I like get energized. I can come out of a mastermind room. I can go all day without peeing, without drinking water, without eating, right? I don't look at my cell phone. I come out of those elite or billionaire sessions and I'm like jazzed up and I'm ready to just keep talking.
Right.
And sometimes after the RIA, there might be a line of people waiting to talk to me, and I'm not discouraging anyone who listens to this who might be in Indy. Please talk to me after the RIA. But the line of people who want to ask a million beginner questions, like, I leave, my throat's dry. Yeah. I'm worn out. It's only a couple hours and I'm worn out when I leave.
Right.
So yeah, if anybody wants to connect about business, who's like trying to go to the next level, like I'm always out there on, like I said, Facebook or the Business by Flipping, and definitely probably I'll circle back with you guys about being on the podcast too, because I appreciate what you guys are doing and the meetup you guys run. Because here's something I'll leave you guys with. For anybody who's listening to this, like, you go through different levels of where you have to like survive at first, right, and then you can thrive later. But here's where the whole thing is. I truly, truly believe, again, life literally is the relationships we make and the experiences we have with those people. And so what that means is the more money you make, the more success you have, the more people you meet. I feel like the progression is going from being a consumer to a contributor. And so you guys as a wholesaling business are consuming in the market. You're doing deals.
Right.
But then with Wholesale Nation and the podcast and the things you guys are doing, it's the same way I feel about it. It's contributing back is infinitely more important. And even whether you monetize it or not, it doesn't matter, because when you put value out, it replicates, right? Kind of like the pay it forward stuff. And so I appreciate what you guys are doing, and I'm glad you guys are running this podcast. I wish you like only the best success with the group and the podcast and everything, because I just know the more people you help, it just comes back to you.
Right.
So
right.
Definitely appreciate that, Steve, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Definitely appreciate it. And again, want to thank you for coming on to the show. We knew we had to get you on with all your wisdom.
Awesome.
So that's why we got you on. And then for those that are in Houston, again, our next meetup, as Steve said, is Wholesale Nation. It's going to be coming up the first Monday in February, which is February the 5th, 6:30 in the north side of Houston at the Hilton Garden Inn. Again, you can go to our Facebook group and subscribe there. It's at Wholesale Nation. And then our podcast, subscribe to Wholesale Nation, and also to our YouTube. But again, Steve, we want to thank you for coming out and listening and talking to us. And we want y'all to thank our listeners as well. And y'all come back now. You hear?
Love it. See you guys.